Ever feel like having kids kind of throws a wrench in your relationship?
More like a whole pile of laundry with a side of Legos.
Right. Like you're both trying to keep this tiny human alive, and the us part gets lost in the shuffle.
Totally. Which is exactly why we're diving into how having kids impacts those romantic relationships.
Yeah. We actually listened to this podcast the other day, When Kids Change the Game.
Catchy, right?
And so true. We talk a lot about the universal truths of parenthood, like, sleep deprivation, feeling needed 24/7.
But this podcast really got me thinking about how much those things can impact a couple.
One of the big takeaways for me was how easy it is to fall into that co-parent trap.
Oh, big time. You become like co-CEOs of Baby Inc., which sounds kind of cute, but
But it can definitely overshadow the romantic partnership.
for sure. The podcast actually highlighted 3 major relationship shifts that happen after kids. Less couple time, obviously.
Way more stress, duh.
And the always fun, navigating those different parenting styles.
Which, let's be honest, can cause some friction.
Totally. And, that whole co-CEO thing, it's not just a cute saying. It speaks to this issue of mental load, which often falls more heavily on women.
Oh, absolutely.
And that can breed resentment if it's not addressed. So communication is super important.
Speaking of, this podcast had a family therapist who gave some great advice on that front.
Yeah, and the big one was prioritizing your partnership. It sounds so obvious,
Right.
but when you're totally sleep deprived, remembering you're 2 people in love, not just parents.
Easier said than done.
The therapist kept emphasizing that real, honest communication is key. Like, not just surface stuff, but talking about your needs, frustrations, even when it's uncomfortable.
Because let's face it, no one wants to have a deep conversation when they're running on fumes.
Totally. The podcast actually shared a couple of stories that really highlight all of this.
Oh, yeah. What were some of those?
One couple talked about how they basically started feeling like roommates after having kids.
Oof.
Date nights, though, that's what they said saved them.
Yeah, it's so easy to let those slip.
They realized, though, that even just 15 minutes after the kids were asleep, just connecting as a couple.
It makes a huge difference.
Huge. It's about shifting from me versus you to that we mentality.
I love that.
Boom.
The podcast also had another couple who talked about, surprise, surprise, clashing over discipline.
Oh, yeah. That's a
I
classic.
feel like every parent has been there.
Totally. And that's where that teamwork comes in. It's like you might not always agree, but presenting a united front.
Even if you're disagreeing behind the scenes.
Exactly. It's crucial for your kids and for your relationship.
For sure. So what can people actually do to navigate all of this? The podcast gave some really practical tips.
Yeah, like we said, date nights. Even if it's just a quick dinner after the kids are in bed.
Communication.
And to make that communication effective, get specific. Instead of, we need to communicate more, it's, let's have a 10-minute check-in every night.
I love that. They also talk about teamwork, but taking it a step further.
Oh, like actually writing down a division of labor.
Yeah, to make sure everyone's on the same page.
Such a good idea, because when expectations are clear, so much less room for resentment to build up.
Right. And finally, the podcast stressed that it's okay to ask for help.
100%. Whether it's family, friends, a therapist,
It's not weakness.
not at all. It's strength. And having that support makes a world of difference.
Having kids is amazing, but it definitely changes things. And, like any other part of your relationship, it takes effort.
Effort and intentionality.
So true. So here's something to think about. What's one small thing you can do this week to nurture your bond as a couple?
It could be anything. A quick chat, a shared dessert.
Anything that reminds you that you're a team. On and off the parenting field.
Love that.
Until next time.